Hello gorgeous people, I am so lucky to be here with you today on the gorgeous Stamperia hop. I received a fabulous box of goodies to play with for this hop, and I've created a gorgeous poppy journal page with them. Now this one's a bit more simple than my usual stuff. It's almost one layer, almost. So I hope you enjoy my mixed media poppy journal page. Made with Stamperia products, of course. You might be wondering what I'm going to do with the goodies from my Stamperia box. I'm going to make a beautiful, quick journal page using some of the products. So I'm going to start with the mixed media glue and stencil, the beautiful outlining contouring pens. I'm going to use some of this beautiful poppy rice paper. I just love this pattern, it's so gorgeous. I'm going to try some of the transfer paste. And I'll use that with the transfer gel. And I'm going to use some of these really pretty papers because turquoise goes beautifully with red. And these are from the Stamperia Wonderland 12 by 12 sheets. So let's get started. So first things first, I just need to cut the background to a size where it's going to sit on my journal page. And I'm just going to use one of these gorgeous craft pages here and cut out my design. And of course I need to cut out some of the designs from the rice paper. Now what I usually like to do is line up some of the elements with other elements on the page so it looks a bit more natural. And I'll try and do that here as well if I can. It's not always possible, but I can line up the little tail here and I can line up the top of the petal here. So that is the major element of my page. Now I just need to see if any of the little extra pieces of collage paper might help make this look better, or if I should just leave it very stark like this. Okay, I see that there's some little ladybugs on the side of the page here. I think they're really cute. I might use those. I'm just going to put these aside somewhere safe and do a bit more work on the background. So I'd like to use some of this transfer paper. Now I haven't used this before, but I have the transfer gel that goes with it. Okay, so it is just like normal laser printed transfers. That should make this process quite simple. And I'm going to add some of it to the background of the page here. So knowing that my image is going to be here, what would I like to add? Alright, so it's really important to know what you're going to be doing as a whole page, and this sort of gives you a bit of freedom to get things in place before actually gluing them down. Now I know I want to add this beautiful stencil. It just says your wings already exist, all you have to do is fly, and I'd like to add that to the top corner here. So I know that I need to leave this area without anything on there so that this really stands out. Okay, so now that I know where that's going, I'm just going to take a pencil, and I like to use watercolor pencils for this because it just makes the job that much easier. And I'm just going to draw around the edge of some of my poppy. And this will just help me put it back in the right spot. Now I can work this into my design when I'm done. Alright, so I can now safely remove this and know where I'm going to add things still. Now I just want a tiny bit of this on here. I don't want it to take over. So I'm just going to rip little strips. And I don't want these to have harsh edges, so I'm not going to use scissors here. I'm just going to tear. Now I don't necessarily want any of it to be readable particularly. I'm just going to make sure I tear through any of those big headlines. So I'm just going to start with the Stamperia transfer gel, and just gently brush this using one of the little brushes from Stamperia as well onto my design here. So following the instructions, I just need to make sure I have an even coat and then apply the paper while it's still wet. Now it's important to press down and make sure that the paper's made good contact with the product. Although in this case it doesn't really matter, because if it ends up a little bit scrappy, that's actually okay. Okay, leave that to dry for 30 minutes. Now, while that background is drying, it's time to move on to the next step. So rice paper is beautiful and thin, but what happens sometimes when you glue it down is that it becomes even more transparent when you add glue. So the colours can really be beautifully layered with what's on the background. In this case though, I'd like the red to remain nice and vibrant, so I'm going to put a coat of white gesso on the back. And this will just help break that transparency, that translucency, and it will let me layer this and keep that red nice. So I've just got some of the Stamperia gesso, and I'm just going to apply that quickly with a little flat brush. Now this might require more than one layer, just see how it goes. Now I'm going to leave the edges of the flower not quite as gessoed as the rest, just so it sort of fades into the background just a little. Now I'm just going over with a second coat of gesso. Alright, so 2 layers of gesso should be enough. And I'll need to do those little ladybugs. Now it's time to start removing the paper. I'm just going to apply water with a water brush and then start rubbing it off. Now the trick here is to rub hard enough to remove the backing paper, but not hard enough so that you remove the text. It's a very fine line sometimes. Now, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 tries to actually remove all the backing paper, so don't give up if you don't get a perfect result the first time. Alright, so if it hasn't all come off exactly the way you wanted it to, wait for it to sort of semi-dry off again, and then rub over the surface once again after wetting it. And you should find that for the most part, two goes with your fingers gets rid of most of the backing paper. Okay, so I've rubbed off the first layer of paper and it's dried again, and I can see some of these are quite fuzzy looking, so I'll need to do them again. The other thing I've noticed is the transfer gel is shiny, which I hadn't noticed before. So just follow the same process as previously, wetting the surface, let it sit there for a minute or 2, and then rub it off. Now all I need to do is wait for it to dry again and brush any of those little scrappy bits of paper off. Alright, so I've removed the rice paper from my little piece of plastic here, and I've noticed that some of the gesso has actually seeped through the paper, but not everywhere. So some of it's perfect and some of it's a little bit coloured with gesso. So I'll just need to apply a little bit of colouring agent to that to brighten it back up when we're finished sticking it down. So I've just glued down the poppy with the mixed media glue and made sure that it is sitting in about the right position. And now I'm just going to go and give it a quick spray with a mattifying spray. You can use a workable matte fixative if you like. Just means that what we put over the top won't interfere with the layers on the bottom. Okay, time to add the ladybugs. Then let the whole thing dry. Alright, so I'm just going to add a little bit of distress ink around the edges here. I'm just using Rusty Hinge and Black Soot, just to give the edges a bit of colour. So I'm just dirtying up the background a little bit, just so it doesn't look too pristine. And I'm just wiping the inky sponge over here. Nothing too fancy. Now I'm just going to enhance the edges of the flowers by using a little bit of the Stamperia blending gel and a little bit of goldy brown paint, which I'm just going to apply with a water brush. Now as you apply it, wipe some of the colour off onto a paper towel and then just dab at the edges, and this will give a less harsh line. In fact, it should look quite lovely and fuzzy. And of course, if you would like a darker colour, just go over it again. Now, of course, if you'd like to engage in a bit of artist jiggery pokery here, what you can do is apply a second layer to where the shadows would be, just to make it a little bit darker, to enhance the image. Now that blending gel opens the drying time of paint, so it means that I can add this and then go back and play with it. I've just got a bit more time to decide how I want the edges and how I want it to look. Just gives me a few more options. Now hold it from different angles and make sure it looks right from all sides. Sometimes things look fine while you're sitting there and then don't look quite right afterwards, so best to sort of move it around before you finish with things. For example, I'm just going to bring this yellow out a tiny bit. Okay, so that's really making that red pop there. It's looking particularly fabulous. And really making that poppy stand out. Now I'm just going to use that same technique and product, so the blending gel and a tiny bit of paint, just to go over some of the red on the poppy, the bits that aren't looking so beautiful at the moment because they were absorbed the gesso. So I have a little bit of red here, it's got a bit of a pink to it, and again I'll just apply it with the water brush, and it's just going to help darken up some of those areas that have been sort of attacked by the gesso. Now the beautiful thing about this is I can paint right over the top but still retain all of the texture and colour underneath. But this will just help fill in any of those little white spots. Now of course if you like the white spots, just leave it as is. It'll give it a more vintage look. And that really helps make the colour a lot, not just brighter, but more intense, more, kind of looks more like a flower. It almost looks silky and satiny like a poppy. So I'm just going to do this other one too, but I'll have to be a bit more careful and make sure to add a bit more water. Just because this one's not quite as heavily outlined. So I could easily lose some of the detail here. Blending gel really means I've got more time with this. It's fantastic. Alright, so I have my stencil sort of taped on my background, and if you've got some Stamperia gesso, use that. Black, of course, to create some beautiful stenciled words. Now I'm just going to lightly tap this over the background, and I'm using a dry brush so that it doesn't scoot under the edges and make a huge mess. As a finishing touch, I have some of the Stamperia outliner in gold. It's just called Contour. And I'm just going to add this on a few touches to give it a bit of a shimmery kind of, you know, yum. Now you don't have to outline the whole flower. I might just pick out a few little shapes, but it's really up to you. Now I find that this colour looks really amazing with that nickel azo gold on the edges. So I'm just going to make sure I put some of it next to that. Now, before you let it dry, lift it up and have a look at it from different angles to see which bits the lights are catching and which might need a little bit more shimmer or shine. Now, if the tip starts to get a little bit less than fine liney, just wipe it on some paper towel, because occasionally you get a little clog. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with this. I think I need a little bit of shadow underneath the little ladybugs, and then I might actually be finished. Now, just so that this isn't the only bit with some shine, I'm going to do something a little bit risky. I'm going to sort of add some of this on here and then swipe it with my finger. Could be a bad idea. Hope not. Let's see. So when you hold it up, you've just got a bit of shimmer on the background here. So I won't add too much, just a little. And you won't even see it unless it's in a certain light. And I think I'm done. Now that everything is dry, the only thing you need to do is glue this into your journal. So let me just give you a close-up look. And the gesso is dry. I've got a beautiful quote here. The gold contouring outliner product is just super yum. Check that out. The colour has dried over the background, and that little bit of paint has helped fill in those funny white spots and also enhance the colour, but you can still see the beautiful patterns and textures and variations and shades coming through from the rice paper. The black ink pen that I've just sort of spread over the black areas has really helped that contrast and is popping. I have a wonderful soft edge and background here from blending that blending gels, strangely enough, with the paint and applying it with the water brush. It's really soft and pretty and yum. I've got the gorgeous transfer papers on here. Some of them I've highlighted the edges with a bit of that outliner. It's just really pretty, and I've got some of the outliner smudged across the background. And it's just coming together beautifully. And I really like the little ladybugs that I've added on here, which is the fly component of the page. So I'm really happy with how this has all turned out. And those Stamperia products performed beautifully. The only thing I had a tiny bit of trouble with was the transfer gel, because I didn't know at the time that it was shiny. A little bit of a spray with matte fixative has completely mattified the background and neutralized any shine from that. So it's looking gorgeous, and that way the only shine you see is the shimmer from that gold outliner. And I am super happy with my gorgeous page using Stamperia products. I think I'm in love with those rice papers. They performed beautifully, and that 12 by 12 paper that I've cut to size for my background, yum. Oh, when combined with all of those other things, just gorgeous. So thank you, Stamperia. I am so happy that you have been included as part of this beautiful hop, and I've loved using these products. So thank you so much.